In this corporate parenting panel, my name is Councillor Stephen Rowe and I'm chairman for this panel. Vice Chairman Councillor Cleo Periton-Williams has sent her apologies. This is not being live fed, but it is being recorded. So I'd like to welcome any members of the public who decide they want to come and watch later. There is no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park, where we need to wait for further instructions. Before we proceed with the formal agenda, may I remind you that your mobiles, laptops and iPads should be on silent mode. We will now move into the formal agenda. Apologies for absence and replacement members. Emily.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Matthews, Councillor Periton-Williams and Janice Spencer. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, this is to confirm that the minutes of our previous meeting, which can be found on page 3 to 12 of the agenda pack, as a correct record. Can I ask for a proposer and seconder, please? Councillor Haig's proposer and a seconder, please. Councillor Cook, thank you. So if we could vote that we agree that the minutes are correct. All those in favour? Sorry. And against? An abstention. Thank you. Did you get that? 2 abstentions. Item 3 is declaration of members' interest. Do any members wish to declare an interest? No, obviously, if anything arises as we go through, then you can mention it. For announcements by the Chairman, Executive Council and lead officers, we have a reasonable agenda today. I will therefore ask the officers who are presenting to summarise the key points of their reports to members of this panel. I would like to stress the importance of concise questions and contributions. I would also like to bring to your attention the Corporate Parenting Panel Workshop organised by Andy Morris and his team, which will take place on the 5th of April this year here at the county offices. We have extended the invitation to members of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee, which has been received with pleasure by the Chairman and Vice Chairman of this committee. For further information, please contact the Scrutiny Officer, Chiara. Sorry, she's telling me how to pronounce her name. Hajionu. Thank you. Executive Council announcements. Councillor Mrs. Bradwell is not going to be with us. Apparently, we've got 1 or 2 things going down that seem to be quite important. Do we have any announcements on behalf of Janice Spencer?
It's working. Okay. No, apologies from Janice Spencer this morning. The Children's Services have had notification from Ofsted, so I'm her replacement this morning. I will address any reports, Councillor Rowe, as needed. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Item 5, Voices for Choices V4C update report. This item is on page 13 to 20 of the agenda pack and provides an overview and summary of the activities between October 2021 and February 2022. The report also offers information on future planning and progress. The report will be presented by Ben Lilly, Practice Supervisor, Quality and Standards, who is attending via his seat over there.
Thank you.
And then we'll take questions at the end.
Yep. Okay. Good morning. So, as stated, this report summarises our V4C activities between October and February of this year. And just to summarise, what V4C is, it's our Children in Care Council, and these are meetings where children and young people who are in care, we encourage them to give their feedback about services they've received, any further support they need, and also just to discuss any general issues which they want to and which affect their lives. So the way how we structure our V4C meetings is across our 4 localities, and I'll give a brief summary across each of those. Just to say that we've continued to concentrate on holding our V4C meetings on a face-to-face basis following the easing of COVID restrictions. For many months, they were virtual. So we are continuing to hold them in buildings and settings where there's established risk assessments in place. Going through the report, you can see the different activities and different attendances and locations. So in Lincoln and West Lindsay, we have quite an established group with a number of activities that they've been involved in over this reporting period. We've got a number of young people engaged with V4C from North Home Children's Home in Gainsborough who are engaging really well. So some of their activities have been around feeding into some requests from the Lincolnshire Youth Commission survey on mental health, analysing and inspecting the COOF online counselling service and giving feedback around that. And they're also talking in Lincoln and West Lindsay about a new project to support homeless young people in Lincoln, and the report just gives a bit of information on that as well. Moving through the report in terms of Boston and South Holland, again, you can see the dates and meetings held there. The similar kind of discussions taking place in the meeting, and again, the team are working hard to engage with and encourage children from Albion Street Children's Residential Home to be involved. East Lindsay, again, we're in a position with East Lindsay where we struggled historically to establish a V4C group. We have managed to get a few attendances in the East Lindsay area in Skegness, and again, they followed through on the similar kinds of issues that the other groups have been discussing in terms of climate change, in terms of mental health, police commissioner crime surveys. And again, through into North and South Kesteven, you can see an overview of the sessions there. Group discussing issues around bullying, preparation for the big conversations that I'll talk about in a bit, and also we've been getting the young people to feed into the development of a new children's services, children in care strategy. So hopefully some of their views will be included in that. During this period, we had a big conversation event that was held at the end of October, so just into this period, where we had 16 young people attend from the different groups into a single meeting, and they've been working on reviewing the children's services coming into care kit and the caring promise, so that work is just coming to a conclusion now. We also had a big conversation, which isn't detailed in the report because it was after the deadline, but a big conversation was held at February half term in Spalding. We had over 25 children and young people attend, a few more than we anticipated, but it was a good event, and hopefully we'll get good engagement for the next one in June. In terms of planning, obviously the V4C meetings are continuing to take place across the 4 localities. That will continue. We have staff who are continuing to visit children and staff in the residential homes to try and encourage further engagement and attendance. And we're also looking to bring back some virtual V4C meetings to complement the physical meetings that we've been concentrating on. I'd just like to conclude with the final few points. We've put in the report there's been a generally successful re-embedding of face-to-face meetings within this reporting period, and that's a fair point, but I would like to qualify that to say that we do want to grow V4C, and we are constantly trying to engage and encourage more children and young people to attend. And there's various things we do around that in terms of raising awareness, visiting some of the children and young people in the homes, and trying to get the message out there that what the group's about, what the groups and the work are about. So that's the summary of where we're at. We're pleased that we've got physical meetings re-established, got a strong desire to grow the groups and get further attendance going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Do we have any questions or comments? Councillor Higgs.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask you, Ben, is there any particular general reasons given for the numbers of children attending these meetings?
Yeah. I'll speak from personal experience because I visited 2 of the residential children's homes last year at Eastgate in Sleaford and Albion Street in Spalding. I spoke to pretty much all the children and young people on 2 visits to each, and some of those children and young people are engaging and are included in those figures. Others just have quite a lot on, actually. Others are involved in quite a lot of other different leisure activities, and were saying they don't really have the time. And when we talk about what the group actually is about giving feedback and being involved in service development of children's services and giving advice to us about what children's services could do differently, you know, that some of them are saying, well, we feel fine, we're quite happy with where we are, and we don't really feel we need to offer that. Historically, in terms of encouraging attendance, we've looked also at holding VFC in different venues, such as in sort of fun settings like at a bowling alley or a soft play area, for example. And that sometimes has had an increased attendance. But the issues we find with that is it can sometimes turn into a fun activity rather than what the purpose of the group is, which is kind of like they're a working group, a Children in Care Council. So by having it in certain environments, we may increase attendance, but we may also mean it doesn't meet the needs of what the group is. One of the things we're going to be doing next month is a postcode analysis of all the children in care that we can pull off from Mosaic, so we can see where children in care live across the county, and from that might help us to look at the best venue in the best town or area to encourage more attendance, because one of the other issues is sometimes transport and travel to get there. We do now offer to pay transport costs for any child or young person who wants to attend.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I suppose just picking up on a few of the points that you've raised, actually, there were points I was going to raise because, I mean, I've never been to the Elsfield Youth Centre, and I don't know if it's a cool place to go or not for younger kids. So I think having the balance of location in terms of where you go. So I think if you are taking them bowling and stuff, you just need to have that balance, because for me is, you know, how do you encourage them to come along? Because, you know, what is the incentive almost? Because, you know, if I was a young kid, I'm definitely not anymore, you know, why would you want to turn up and have that conversation? You raised the point just now actually about access and travel. So I'll use my own example of South Kesteven. So obviously we use Grantham quite a lot. Well, I presume we've also got children, you know, down in the south of the county, so in Stamford. You know, there is no bus connection from Grantham to from Stamford to Grantham. So for them, they're already excluded in a certain extent.
We use taxis for the majority of the transport.
Okay, great. And then obviously number of young people attending. So you've got 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. What is that actually in comparison to the numbers that we have that could attend to those that are turning up?
I don't have those figures to hand, but I'm looking to other people, the numbers of children in care across the county or by region. I'm not sure at the moment.
Would it be helpful for me to come in here? In terms of the total number of children in care to Lincolnshire, 720 as we stand today. Not all of those children will be in placements. Some children will be at home with parents under certain regulations, but the total figure is 720 across the board.
So in that comparison, then the number of people attending is low.
Yes.
So then the pushback would be, how are we encouraging more to become involved and attend? And what methods are we using?
So we use quite a lot of advertising in terms of sending out information to across our teams about VFC. We visit the children's homes on an ongoing basis, and some of these activities are now being delivered directly in the children's homes as well. We use social media, and in the past, which we plan on doing again, is writing out directly to children and young people as well. So we have concentrated over the past several months on trying to encourage the children who are in residential care homes to attend VFC. But we also need to make sure that we've got publicity going out now to encourage children and young people in other settings, foster carers, to attend. Historically, you know, we've had it's always been difficult to encourage children and young people to attend VFC and children in care councils. And we're always open to any further suggestions to how we can do further engagement to encourage attendance. But yeah, I mean, I make a point of trying to go and visit some of the centres, some of the homes myself to speak to them, which I did last year.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, I'd be very happy. I'd actually be really interested to come along to one of the sessions.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested
Open
to meet some of the kids and stuff. And
to attend.
yeah, I'd be really interested.
Yeah,
do that.
Councillor Whittington.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just to sort of explore it a bit further. Obviously, I appreciate Ben during the last few months, post COVID, you've been concentrating on sort of re-establishing the face-to-face meetings, and you did sort of mention as well as that you're going to be sort of starting to restart a lot of the virtual stuff as well. Because I'm guessing that potentially, if you could reinforce face-to-face meetings with virtual meetings, you might sort of find it easier to sort of build up, a core of attendees. Because I think,
Yeah.
So certainly, I know I've got four granddaughters, all 6 and under, and what they can and they spend a lot of time with Kindles and tablets and things like that. And that's sort of age. So I'd imagine, these days, sort of communicating via virtually is a big thing for children. So if you could just sort of a little bit around how hopefully you can produce an overall package of a mixture of face-to-face and virtual. But I was really interested in the numbers you said for the big conversation events in February, sort of increase from 16 to 25. And you said that was held during the half-term week.
Yes.
You also mentioned that children have other things on. So I'm just wondering potentially if something potentially is arranging stuff during half-term, because obviously I'm guessing then children have less. They're under quite a stress with school and homework and stuff like that. So maybe holding events during half term might fit in better with their timetables. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, can I just come back on that if that's okay? So yeah, so in terms of the VFC activities in sort of holiday periods, we have the 3 big conversations which take place in February half term, May half term, and October half term, and that brings the groups together into a single meeting. So there is that activity taking place. We can look to look at specific VFC locality groups to take place in school holidays as well. The point you raised is a good one in my view, because could there be potential to run VFC in a different way? So it's not always in the evenings, not necessarily every month. I don't know, but these are the kinds of things that me and the team are trying to work around and discuss really. Because your point is noted that we do find the attendance is better in the daytime, in school holiday times, rather than in the evening on a dark, damp December or January night when people don't really want to necessarily go out very far.
Councillor Keeley, did you have a question?
Yeah. I think it's quite a risk, isn't it, for children to come to an unknown venue? I mean, I don't know the practicalities of this. Could you go to them? Or is that absolutely a silly suggestion? Because they're probably outside their comfort zone, and I taught older children, so I'm not really familiar with the children you're talking about, but I just think these children are probably fragile and they are averse to taking risks. So I don't know whether my suggestion of you giving them a taster in their own environment is a possibility.
So some of that happens. So like the report shows that some of the meetings have taken place within the residential children's homes, for example, at Eastgate and North Home. And we're always open to doing that. When I visited Eastgate, I spoke to 5 of the 6 children and people who were there, and I put that question to them actually, and they said they would rather go out of their home to a meeting or a session to get out and about. So you kind of think, well, you say that, but then we can't get them to where we want them to be. But I do take your point, and I know what does happen is the residential care officers who work with the particularly vulnerable children will work with them and bring them to the meeting and take them in. That does happen.
Sorry, I think they may say that, but when it comes to doing it, they don't. because it's
Possibly.
easy to say it, isn't it?
Yeah, possibly.
So I just think you have to see what is happening,
Yeah.
and that is the more important indicator, isn't it? Whereas what children say, they probably want to please you.
True, possibly.
Yeah. So,
So-
that's my view.
So yeah, so we do deliver some of the sessions in the homes, and we can look to continue and
Yeah.
increase that.
Because then I think really what you have to do is get a critical mass of people, or children, sorry. And if, you know, you have a few, then they will encourage other peers, won't they?
That's
They
what we're
will.
hoping.
Yeah, so I think that's what you have to do. You've got to go to their own environment, despite what they say,
Yeah.
and just do it that way.
And of course, the other issues, we've got foster carers who work with families all over,
Yeah.
so we can't really go individually to a lot of them, you see. So
Yeah.
that's why we've been like.
Because I don't think if I was a young child, I would want to necessarily go somewhere that I didn't really know. I mean, it's quite understandable, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And others want to get out as well. So it's yeah,
Get out.
get out and about. I mean, get out.
Yeah, okay.
Any further questions? No. Thank you, Ben. The panel is invited to provide comment and steer regarding V4C activities and meetings undertaken within the reporting period and future planning and delivery of V4C meetings and activities. I move that the panel receives and endorses the report, that we are satisfied with the activities undertaken under the specific reporting period, and we request our comments as recorded are taken under consideration in future planning and delivery of V4C. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement? Thank you very much. That was unanimous. So we now move on to item 6, Children in Care Q3 Performance Report. This item on pages 21 to 42 of the pack provides the panel with key performance information for Q3 2021-2022. This report will be presented by Deborah Crawford, Head of Service Fostering, Adoption and Leaving Care, who is also with us. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm standing in this morning for Janice Spencer, who's the Assistant Director for Children's Services, given the announcement of an Ofsted inspection. So I think you'll appreciate she's rather tied up. However, I have the privilege to share with you this morning and go through the summary highlights of the performance report for children in care. You'll have heard in the previous presentation this morning the number of children that are in care to Lincolnshire County Council currently stands at 720 and has been a increasing but fluctuating figure with a maximum of 727 as recently as last week. That is a daily figure that can alter depending on the starters into care and the leavers from care. I suppose just in terms of summary, what I'd like to do is give a bit of a highlight to the number of children in care per 10,000 under the age of 18. Whilst the measure has not been achieved, the target of 46 per 10,000, with Lincolnshire showing kind of higher, the higher tolerance level, what I would want to just highlight is there has been a 39% increase in children coming into care between Q3 and Q2. What the figures actually reflect in earnest is that as part of England and our statistical neighbours, we are still performing well, given the percentages which are at the bottom end of the paragraph on page 22. The question of increase is related to the local authorities' responsibilities to safeguard the welfare of children, but also I would like to point out that the growth in numbers is partly attributable to the number of unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people who have arrived as part of the new mandated scheme for all local authorities known as the National Transfer Scheme. So I do want that context to be obviously understood. But fundamentally, in comparison from where we were as an authority in March 2020 to where we are almost the end of March 2022, we have an increase of nearly 100 children in care. So I think, you know, that immediately gives you a sense of some of the challenges, some of the issues, some of the societal difficulties that we're dealing with. What I would say is that we try in earnest to ensure that each and every one of those children have the opportunity to live within a family environment. And I can say to you that of that 720, 69% of those children are actually in local authority foster placements. So across the county, which is a good thing to note. We obviously look to family safely. We obviously look to extended family and the extended network when we think about placing children in care. That's all on the back of, thorough assessments. So we look to give those children that best opportunity wherever we can. What I would say is that the challenge has been and continues to be that the council are in a very, very competitive marketplace in terms of recruitment and retention of foster carers to provide for children in care. We never take our foot off the pedal with regards to our proactive advertising, our recruitment strategy. The reality is that the pandemic has led to some people making clear life choices, reevaluating their own personal circumstances, or confirmation that actually they do want to continue to foster, but they don't want to take more children in. So one of the challenges has been, if I might say, that we, despite the gradual easing and the reopening, that hasn't immediately arrived on our doorstep. We're still going through the recovery phase of foster carers returning to us. I know that at earlier meetings I've had the privilege of saying and having it recorded about the continued efforts of foster carers and their families, their fostering families, to support our children in care, and that doesn't waver at all. People have continued to accept children into their homes, but there are differences from where we were in March 2020 to where we are today. What I would say is, in terms of looking at our performance, that we've seen many children remain in stable, secure placements. We've seen a delay in proceedings through the family courts. And we've also seen a number of care plans for children, much younger children, with a plan for long-term fostering, as opposed to a permanence alternative of adoption, special guardianship orders, or a private law order. So not only is the number different, but the context of the children and the complexities are even different. So I think that on the whole, even though there are some indicators in here about performance, we are continuing to do well. We're continuing to place children as far as we can locally to their communities, to their extended family, to enable family time to take place, and for all the other factors such as education and health, which are important parts of their development, to remain the same. We've seen a slight increase in terms of dental checks. And I know in earlier meetings we've discussed the issues and challenges around access to dental care. And one of the continued areas of work relates to children coming into care and their immunisations and medical assessments, which we continue to work rigorously on. There are a couple of other areas with regards to 16 and 17-year-old children in care who are participating in learning, and my colleague Kieran Barnes, who's head of virtual school, is here this morning if there are any questions that pertain to that. And I would just say, like, equally, with regards to care leavers in education, employment and training, and I know that's been a previous subject that we've had within corporate parenting, but it remains below target, but is slowly improving, which is the right way to be moving. And my colleague Andy Morris is here as the corporate parenting manager, and again, happy to take any questions or inquiries that anybody has in relation to that. I suppose I almost end where I started, which is there has been a significant increase. And I think from our children in care living within a family environment, that remains above target and has improved slightly since our last quarter. What that means is that when any child, a young or a sibling group, we always explore every option which we have a legal and moral duty to undertake to ensure that the best interests of the children are served. So it may be sometimes that children are placed within their own or extended family, and we use that as the basis of good practice to start with. So continued challenging times, but I have to say overall, we in light of statistics of our local neighbouring authorities and the national position, we are performing well. So if I can take any questions or queries, more than happy to, Chair.
Okay, the panel's invited to consider and comment on the performance information contained in the appendices of this report and recommend any actions or changes to the Executive Council for Children's Services, Community Safety and Procurement. Do we have any questions and comments? Councillor Higgs.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a couple of questions, but I don't want. One's probably going to sound a little bit more flippant, and it's not intended to be flippant, but if more unaccompanied children are coming in, finishing up in the county, are we likely to get to the situation where private fostering companies will target children from Lincolnshire or English children opposed to unaccompanied children coming into the country? And also, does that mean if we're going to get more unaccompanied children coming into the county, do we need to create a system where they can be taught English? They're going to be more traumatized anyway, let alone with the recent things that are happening in Eastern Europe. And I just wonder whether we're at the start of receiving more, and it's not a criticism or anything. I just wonder whether we're going to be at the beginning of an influx of more and more children finishing up in Lincolnshire, that we need to provide the facilities to get them down to a less traumatized and a more fulfilling life. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think if we might answer this question in two parts, really, because I'll do the first bit and then I'm going to go to Andy Morris for the second bit. I think one of the points that you made, very insightful, really, Councillor Haigh, was in relation to the trauma experienced by a significant number of the unaccompanied asylum seeking young people have arrived here. Obviously, as you will appreciate from the report and from what I've said this morning, is that the government have mandated this. We are very aware of what the quota in terms of numbers look like. I would go as far as saying that reading some of the materials and sharing that with colleagues is indeed quite traumatic when we understand what journeys these children, young people have had. We have had a quota of young people in, and we have been very fortunate up to this point that the majority are 16 pluses. So we do have to obviously accommodate them by law, and we do have to ensure that they have suitable, safe and secure provision as a corporate parent. However, the supply and demand of those placements are slightly different. So what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, is I'm going to hand you over to Andy Morris, who will complete the question. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm the county lead for the National Transfer Scheme as well. So to date, we've had, just since November, we've had 17 young people come into our care via the National Transfer Scheme, which is mandated across the whole country. So we're not the only local authority in terms of looking at sustainability and sufficiency of placements. There's an East Midlands kind of tension. So it's not just Lincolnshire looking for placements. If we're looking for a foster placement, Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire, Derbyshire, everybody is looking at placements because every local authority has had this mandated. And what that means is we have to take into our care a maximum of 0.07% of our population, which for us totals 104 children, additional children in care, on top of where we are now. We've had 17 come into our care since November, and that number, I've just received an email about another mandated transfer today. So this is happening across the whole country. And as Deborah says, we're quite fortunate that a lot of the young people coming into care are 15, 16, 17 years old. So actually the tension on foster placements hasn't been the greatest pressure point. The pressure point is on finding suitable supported placements for our young people. And we work very closely with a fantastic organisation, excuse me, called Locate. Who are an organisation who specialise in the support to unaccompanied asylum seekers. They're set up for this. They have language specialists within their service. And what we've got to remember in terms of funding, each of these young people is supported with a funding package from the Home Office. So there is a separate pool of funding for these young people. So financially, it doesn't add an enormous strain. It does add a tension and a strain to the local authority in terms of staffing, but in terms of financial contributions to fund placements, it doesn't. There is still then the challenge of finding placements because everybody's looking, because everybody's had this mandated. So what I'm doing as the budget holder for this, I'm working very closely with all the teams to allocate additional funding to recruit social workers, practice supervisors. I've allocated additional funding to the Leaving Care Service as well for some project workers to work specifically with unaccompanied asylum seeking children to take into account all of those kind of factors you identified, such as the experiences of trauma, the difficulties they've had travelling to this country. But the National Transfer Scheme is on top of any spontaneous arrivals. And we use that term, we don't use that term lightly, but that's the correct language. Sometimes young people just turn up in the county and they're found by the police and they're found to be an unaccompanied asylum seeking young person and they come into our care on top of this number. So it is a tension. We're resourcing it. I've got the funding. We're looking at apportioning that resourcing out to fund placements, staffing, support. And there is a national drive as well from health colleagues who recognise this because we work very closely with Liz Bunny on kind of the relationship we have with Peterborough, which is where a lot of young people live because that's where Locate is based. And what we've noticed is Peterborough has a greater community to meet their cultural needs, such as religious needs or other connected community. So Peterborough is a place where we work with a lot of our young people. And we've got specifically a Leaving Care team based in Peterborough to service this cohort of young people because they make up 1/5 of our care leavers as well. So it's a pressure, but we're working very quickly on it.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, my concern was not really financially the burden that it, or the increase it's going to put on us as a council. It's really the ability to find the people to be able to staffing for it, I guess, when the numbers are just going to grow probably quite significantly over the next few years. So thank you.
Yeah, just to say, we've just recruited 4 additional staff, so we're really conscious of that. So we are building our staff cohort to take care of them.
Councillor Whittington.
Thanks for that. And Andy, thanks for the details around the National Transfer Scheme, because I think it's the first that I think we've actually sort of had an explanation as to how it works and sort of the quotas that we have to accept. I'm guessing that quota was set pre-Ukraine. And I'm just wondering potentially if that quota, I'm expecting potentially it will increase. I mean, I think we've all seen the pictures over the last couple of weeks of a lot of, sort of, I think every time you turn the news on, the number seems to have gone up by 100,000 people. I mean, I don't know what it is this morning, but it must be approaching 2 million refugees out of Ukraine. So I'm just wondering, potentially there's going to be quite a lot of those, I'm guessing, are going to be 15, 16, 17-year-olds who are trying to get out. And I'm just wondering if that number potentially is likely to increase as well. Thanks.
It's a number mandated by the Home Office. So it'll be down to, I guess, the Home Secretary to make a decision on, in conjunction with the Department for Education, about what the number will be. But the measure still stands at 0.07% of our population of children, which is 104 at the moment.
Councillor Keeley.
Sorry, could you just clarify? So how many children over 18 are in the National Care Scheme at the moment?
In our leaving care service, it's about 80.
80.
80, yeah. We've got 407 care leavers.
Right. And obviously, as Councillor Mark Whittington has just said, that is going to, with what's going on in Ukraine, that's going to create additional pressure points, isn't it? So are you proactive in that, or do you respond to what the Home Office is telling you? I mean, I think what you're doing is fantastic. I just want to know the sort of process of how this feeds to local authorities, because you see on the news, you know, all these it's awful watching it, you know, all these people coming in, and there just doesn't seem to be a system. So I'm just wondering how you fit into this, and whether there is a system and the media are making it seem as there isn't. I don't know.
The only part I play in the system is once the Home Office contact me to say we've got a young person we'd like to transfer to your care. Everything that happens prior to that is responsibility of Border Patrol, Border Services, Home Office. Has to stay well away from that and wait for the young people to come to our care and be offered to us by the Home Office, and we take them in and support them.
So can I just ask, when you say you support them, could you just explain in a little bit more detail what you actually do? Because obviously these children are really traumatized. I mean, I'm traumatized and I'm over 60, and I just think, how can these children, you know, they've been separated possibly from their parents, they didn't necessarily know, even though they may have suspected it, this was what was going to happen. So how do you cope with that?
Each young person is allocated a social worker. They've got an independent reviewing officer. We've got access to all the mental health services, foster care or supported living options. And when they leave care, they receive absolutely every single right that any member of an Indigenous population in the United Kingdom would receive as a care leaver. And in addition to what they need, you know, we do have specialist services set up through mental health support. We've got a mental health worker directly linked into the leaving care service now. So we're building those services all the time. And I guess it's on each young person's individual needs. Some young people are less traumatized than others. And what we try not to do is just create a blanket response. It becomes a unique, bespoke response to each young person based on their assessments. So it is down to the assessed needs of every single individual child.
So it is sort of customized in a way. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think just to give some assurance to Councillor Kinney that all of the leaders of across Lincolnshire are meeting on a very regular basis in terms of the Ukraine response. The Chief Executives across Lincolnshire had a meeting yesterday in terms of the response to the ongoing situation in Ukraine. Obviously, at the present time across the county, we are still waiting for the guidance from the government in terms of the Home Office. I think all of the councils across Lincolnshire said that they stand ready to support any individuals that are coming from Ukraine. I know from a South Kesteven point of view, we still have 192, I think it is, in terms of Afghan refugees that we are still actively supporting. So I presume in terms of some of the other districts, they will come forwards first in the levels of support. But just to, you know, we've got another meeting of all of the leaders across Greater Lincolnshire and chief execs tomorrow. And obviously this is one of the agenda items that we will be covering. So we are doing our bit. Coming back onto the agenda though, I just wondered if I could have probably use over. I had a really successful meeting, or very productive meeting, I think you could probably say, with Janice for my own personal understanding of the world of corporate parenting and also children's services. But so the targets that we're looking at, can you just give some more context and understanding of how they're set, how they're benchmarked, and how they might change and evolve over time?
Yes, certainly. We are part of the benchmarking forum for on a national picture. So essentially, we as officers look at our themes, our trends, the projections in terms of children in care population. Obviously, we have the data, national data that we compare against, and we certainly in terms of the number of children in care where we are functioning and have done for a number of years actually in terms of doing very well in terms of comparative in terms of our comparative neighbours. What then evolves when we look at the numbers of children in care is what our performance needs to look like. So it's done with our corporate performance team that look at all the kind of national picture, the information and guidance from the Department of Education. So that really gives us the projections for what our provision needs to look like going forward. So we knew the trend. We didn't know the pandemic was going to come, obviously, but we had projected prior to that the way in which our growth was going to go in terms of our children in care. I mean, obviously, the National Transfer Scheme was voluntary and then mandated. But in terms of safeguarding children, our priorities have always been, what they are, and they've remained essentially. But we've also, we as a corporate leadership team and a senior leadership team sit and review our progress, look at our data on a monthly basis, look at areas of strength and areas where we might be outside of our range. We are just now looking at next year's measures. So essentially, it's not something that we set at the start of a year and then don't go back to. We are constantly, from a performance perspective, on it all of the time. So we have a daily update to all the officers of the number of children in care, which then we can dig down into, so we can see the starters of children coming in and the age, the trajectory of those leaving or on their way to leaving care. So we, as I said, it fluctuates daily. So I could be sat here tomorrow with a slightly different figure, but as of today, but we don't work in isolation. We're kind of very much in tune with the national picture.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cook, for that additional information. And Deborah and Andrew, thank you. I move that we receive and note the report and that our comments from the discussions as recorded are taken under consideration. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement? Thank you very much. That is agreed. So we move on to item 7, Fostering Performance Report, February 2022. This item is on page 43 to 54 of the agenda pack and provides panel members with an overview of the fostering service in-house matching events relating to securing performance for children in care. The report will be presented by Deborah Crawford, Head of Service Fostering, Adoption and Leaving Care, and Rebecca Fleming, Practice Supervisor. Thank you, Deborah.
Me again. Okay, we just thought it would be a welcome opportunity this morning to talk with you and share experience around fostering permanence for children who are in foster care. My colleague Rebecca Fleming is with us this morning, and between myself and her, she will give an overview of our strategy with regards to permanence and what our recent experiences have been, and obviously more than happy to take any questions. If I can just say that Rebecca is a practice supervisor who has a lead responsibility in fostering for retention and recruitment, so has a particular angle in that regard. Obviously, you've heard about the number of children that are in care for local authority, and our premise that actually children should have, and most children are able to live within a family environment, whether it's within their own extended family or another family that they're not related to. Permanence comes in many different guises, really, and there are some core principles to what we adhere to in terms of our legal framework, in terms of good practice, but in terms of doing the right thing for children and young people. One of the key functions of a child's care plan is to ensure that each child who comes into care has a clear plan of what is going to happen and what we want the outcome to look like. And that really should be determined by the second Children in Care review. So permanence means different things to different people, and what essentially we aim to do is making sure that there is a long-term plan for how a child will be cared for, which lasts through their minority, and we prepare them for leaving care and adulthood. In every instance, we look to provide good outcomes, giving children that security, consistency and the continuity so they can develop their own identity, sense of security, and we give them the best chance to enjoy, achieve and contribute to society. So our endeavours are really because we know what the impact of instability can do for children. Obviously, there are a number of reasons why children do come into care, and the trauma and their experiences are very, very unique. However, what we need to ensure is that we in no way contribute to the instability and the experiences that they've had, and therefore from the beginning of their journey to leaving, it's about communication, good care planning, and the voice of the child needs to feature throughout. There's a number of different, as I've said, types of permanence, and there are some where children come into care and are reunited with their birth family when it's safe and reasonable to do so. Kinship care is what I often allude to in terms of their network of support or extended family, and that is done through a thorough and rigorous assessment. There are some children who achieve permanence through adoption, and this is all dependent on the child's age, their experiences, the level of understanding and such like. There's also private law orders in terms of special guardianship orders and child arrangements orders that are fundamentally following an on from an assessment by the local authority, endorsed as a plan by the court. And throughout all of those, obviously, we work with families to ensure that their views, opinions and their contributions, and indeed the child's, is taken into account. But for some children, and we have seen a trend over the last few years, there are more younger children who have care plans for long-term fostering than what they do or what they have done previously. That gives us a number of challenges, really, because obviously our efforts are to, provide children with the best plan at the earliest point in their lives. Sometimes adoption is not deemed to be the right plan for children, and long-term fostering is achieved. And that's why when we look to recruit foster carers, we look to recruit people from all different walks of life who've got very different experiences and can offer children in our care of, a varied experience. So, permanence through living within a family that are unrelated, it's something that we never ever rule out. I'm going to hand over to Rebecca, who's going to come and talk to you about the Lincolnshire context and recruitment and move us through how we match children who have got a care plan for permanence and how we marry them up with the foster carers suitable to their needs. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay. Thank you, Deborah.
So there are different types of fostering, and we are currently recruiting and marketing for all different types of foster carers. So looking for respite, long-term and also short-term foster carers as well for all age groups, which is currently a need that we have. Now, those people coming forward will take part in an assessment process, and that assessment process will ultimately determine the most appropriate form of fostering for them to take on at that particular time. And they'll be approved for the most appropriate type. In regards to foster carers are able to have that type of approval reviewed as well. So for example, we may be approving foster carers for a short-term fostering, but then what we find is as their experiences, as they become more experienced, as they improve knowledge, the amount of knowledge that they have, the skills that they have through that journey, that we can have a look at also approving them for permanence as well. So in regards to the recruitment, so what we're looking at our current cohort of foster carers. So for some children, they will be in a task-centred or a short-term placement. And when ultimately the decision is made in regards to the child if this to stay in long-term foster care, then there will be some consideration as to whether the child would remain with their current carer, if it felt that is in the best interest of the child and the foster carer. So we're also looking out to our current foster carers to have a look at whether they would like to explore permanence as another form of fostering that they provide. We've also got, we're also looking at the recruitment of carers that come in that want to start off with permanence. So we have a strategy in place, so trying to attract members of the public that they feel would be able to offer a child a long-term home. Finding permanent placements from the offset is particularly challenging for people coming forward. It's a huge commitment to make without really any prior experience. And we're looking at whether, particularly for sibling groups as well, and for also teenagers, is a particular challenge. We're also we do have a national shortage of people coming forward to be foster carers as well. So in regards to finding children a permanent home, we need to use matching, and matching is really important whilst considering the needs of the child and the experiences and the circumstances of the foster carers, and making sure that ultimately they're able to fully meet the needs of that child. So careful consideration is given not only to the current needs of that child, but what the ongoing needs for that child are going to be longer term as the child moves on and approaches, becoming a young person and then ultimately becoming an adult. So the right match is really crucial when we're considering stability and the long-term outcomes. The Rethink Fostering workstream, which was through the Partners in Practice collaboration, they were looking at how we work as a team and how we are working with foster carers and ensuring that to make this possible for them is that we're providing, you know, the right support, we're providing them with the right training, the right resources, and we're using evidence-based and best practices in regards to being able to support them and make it possible for them to look after children on a long-term basis. So one of the elements, so the work stream explores different approaches in fostering, and this has resulted in the creation of an in-house matching event. This event brings together for those that know children to present a profile of them. So, for example, the child social worker who knows the child well will attend one of these events and share information about the child, what their needs are, answer any questions from potential foster carers that would be interested in possibly providing this child with a long-term home. And we also use the Valuing Care tool as well. So on the sheet here, we've got an example of the Valuing Care, the assessment profile. Now, there is one of these for the child, and then there's also one of these for the foster carer as well. So if I could ask you to consider, so if we're looking at this particular child here, one of our children in care, we can see where their highest needs are. So for example, when we're looking at here, this is a female child age 8, and I've just given you there's a little bit of an overview about this child underneath here. But ultimately, we're looking at this child has high needs in regards to learning difficulties. They do have high needs in regards to sexual behaviour because of previous experiences that they've had. They struggle with regulation, so around emotional health, and they really struggle to understand positive relationships. So when we're looking at a foster carer for this particular child, that needs a long-term home, we're looking for a family, and we're looking for a carer that is able to meet these needs. So, for example, the foster carer will equally have one of these profiles. So what we're able to do is we can say, okay, then, so this particular foster carer has a lot of knowledge and experience in regards to supporting children with emotional, in regards to emotional health and emotional well-being. And we consider this to be a real strength for that particular carer. So in regards to that point, we would be saying, actually, this child's need can be met by that carer in the short term and in the long term as well. So just matching that across here. So for example, we've got this the child here. One of the things which is common amongst our looked after children's population is that this child has suffered developmental trauma. So what we know is, this results in a difficulty and challenge in regards to cognitive function for this child. So things like their social communication skills, their understanding of other people's intentions, their understanding of social cues, being able to regulate their own emotions, being able to control their impulses. These are all things that this particular child is going to struggle with. And that's not going to be a short-term, so there's going to be no short-term solution for that. So we're going to need a foster carer in terms of, empathy, a foster carer that's going to remain curious, a foster carer that's going to be able to parent therapeutically, is going to be able to offer that child somewhat of a predictable environment. So we're taking all of these things into account when considering who is the best person to be able to care for this child long term. So the intention and purpose of the Family Finders event is to present children to people that are considering permanence as an option. And what they'll do is prior to the event, the foster carers also attend a preparation course, just so they can consider the realities really of long-term care, what it means, have other carers that offer this type of care, you know, a perspective of that and the things that they're going to come up with. And it also gives them an opportunity to start to build their own profile and understand the types of things that they're going to be able to support, and the types of challenges or long-term plans that they're going to be able to commit to as a family whilst considering their whole family unit and that environment. So the first in-house matching event was first piloted in June 2021, and the evaluation of that allowed us to then look at future events and how they would be put together. The next event is due to take place this summer. So we welcome the children's social workers, we welcome foster carers and members of the fostering team to that event in order to really present the information the way that I've presented it to you today for people to consider. Now, what we do absolutely acknowledge is we're never going to get a perfect match for a particular child. And actually, we're looking for a best fit in regards to that. And that's where placement support is really, really important. So what we're having a look at is that there's a plan of short-term and long-term support for that particular carer. And this really is dependent upon the needs of the child, those needs that can be met by that carer already, and those things that we recognise maybe they're not able to completely meet those needs, and then that provides us with a clear indication of where the support needs to be directed to, and where their personal and professional development needs to be. So, for example, this can include specialist training, specialist equipment, access to specialist services and therapeutic intervention, and regular planned respite or long-term connected. So each support package is considered on an individual basis in order to meet the individual needs of that child and be able to support the individual needs of the foster carers and their family. So in conclusion, really, we're looking at that we're remaining focused on need rather than behaviour. Behaviours can seem very overwhelming. You know, we're trying to strip those back, and actually these are the needs that need to be met. So and remaining focused on that. Good matching remains a priority, particularly for these children, in terms of placement stability. To avoid any moves later. The support and development for carers is absolutely important in terms of being able to ensure that those placements remain stable, and foster carers can continue to meet the changing needs of that child as they grow up. The recruitment of these types of carers will remain a priority, and we're also going out and doing bespoke adverts in regards to particular children, and asking people whether they could meet the needs of that particular child, particularly when we have been unable to match them with anybody that we currently have within the fostering community. So, thank you very much.
Mayor, Councillor Rowe, we thought it would be helpful to share just a small animation which gives you and colleagues here at Corporate Parenting a flavour of what some children experience as a consequence of being placed for permanence. So if I may, thank you.
So my mum got ill when I was 7 and I became her main carer because my dad was an alcoholic. And then one day we couldn't wake her up. And then a couple of days later, she died. And I was 13. And like, I mean, my dad had always been an alcoholic before my mum got ill. So the house was so volatile because one little thing and it just like erupt into doors flying off the handles, plates being thrown. I wouldn't sleep just out of fear. So one of my school counsellors got involved. I said that I was going to go live with a foster parent, and I went to see her, and it was really weird because I was like, I'm probably gonna live with this lady for the rest of my time in care. So like, I'm being my parent, like telling me what to do was hard. Like, it was hard to accept that, and that was what was happening. But children will test boundaries, and they will do things that you tell them not to do. They will defy you, but they're doing it because that's how they deal with things. That's how they know if you care about them. It took quite a while, and I think it took a lot of patience from her, and I don't think I would have survived without her, and I don't think I'd be able to realize how much potential I have without her. I mean, I didn't think I'd even make it to 18. You know, I was not in a good place after my mum died, and so I didn't even think I'd make it here. I don't think there's much more that you can say apart from thank you for just loving us when we're strangers and just helping us to see that we are amazing in all of our own ways and that we deserve to be loved and to be cared about.
Thank you for allowing us to share such a powerful account from Ellie. And I think what I would say is what an inspirational young person, young woman she is. I love the fact that she's doing social care. And I would say to any foster carer who has opened their doors to any children, but particularly those who have been through circumstances like Ellie that are not that unfamiliar to those of us that work in the job, that what an inspiration they are to humankind, because they open the doors to people that are not their children but actually take them on as their own. So just to share some of the powerful work that we do within children's social care. So thank you for allowing us to share that with you this morning.
Thank you very much. The corporate parenting panel is asked to consider and comment on the report, and that the report be accepted as an accurate overview of the in-house matching activity of the service in relation to efforts made to secure permanence for children care. Do we have any questions or comment? Councillor Whittington.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks, Deborah, and thanks Rebecca for that. I mean, I think, I mean, as some people know, myself and my wife, we adopted a child from Lincolnshire many years ago, and we went through sort of being assessed and everything, and also, yeah, you know, we were looking at permanence for adoption, but certainly I remember from that training the important message that kept being brought over to us, that, you know, for a lot of these young people, you know, they've had a lot of trauma in their lives, and potentially they've been moved out of a family environment, probably into care, and actually a lot of them potentially can suffer a number of moves, and that is a big destabilizing impact as well, and doesn't allow them to sort of settle anywhere. So I think it's really good that we are looking to sort of, you know, look towards permanence and long-term foster placements, because obviously, you know, children need they need stability in their lives. They need to be constantly moved around. So I just found it very, very a really good presentation, and particularly the last bit at the end, Ellie's story, because that kind of I think brings it home to us, you know, what we're actually here about, whether we are working for the authority in the job, as Deborah said, or as counsellors, you know, with our corporate parenting responsibilities. I think that really is a really powerful little story, and she's great to see, because I think Ellie's been, I think Andy's mentioned Ellie before, and I think it's great potentially, you know, that Ellie's going to be studying social work at university, and you know, maybe one day it'll be working in Lincolnshire in the team. So thanks.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments? No. So, put my glasses back on. I move that the panel receives the report and that comments from the discussion as recorded are taken under consideration. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement? That is agreed. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you very much, Deborah. So we now move on to item 8, council tax relief to children leaving care, local and national context. This report on page 55-56 of the agenda pack. The paper outlines the achievement to secure council tax exemption and some of the more recent collaboration with district councils. The report will be presented by Andy Morris, Corporate Parenting Manager. Thank you, Andy.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. I'll keep it brief because it's a fairly short paper, but maybe there's probably more discussions and questions to come from it about what the next steps might be. But it's just to put into context that a number of years ago, the Care Leavers Covenant was created by central government, and that was a drive to encourage local authorities to find greater connection to our corporate parenting partners across district councils and all other agencies. And what this paper focuses on is the district council often some of the successes we've had in securing some benefits and additionalities for our care leavers and those young people all the way up to the age of 25. Very simply put, the district councils have worked really hard with myself and the Leaving Care Service to secure benefits for our young people. And after a period of time, we've eventually secured very slowly a number of district councils to agree council tax relief for our care leavers. It started with East Lindsay, and within about 9 months, all of the district councils had come on board together, and we now offer council tax relief for our care leavers all the way up to the age of 24. And just to put that into a little bit of context, last year, in fact, it was during the last ILAC inspection, so 2 years ago, during the inspection, I got an email from a care leaver just saying thank you for the council tax relief, because he has an extra £120 a month in his pocket, and he puts that into fuel in his car. Probably won't fill much of his car at the moment, but it put fuel in his car, and it enabled him to go to work. So that very, very small piece of council tax relief for one young person had an enormous impact on his life, and we successfully agreed that across all of the 7 district councils now. In addition to council tax relief, I think I've talked about it before, but we all of the district councils have agreed local connection to our young people. So young people can agree to live anywhere in the county, anywhere that they'd like to live, or anywhere that's good for them to live in terms of connection to education or employment. That's enabling our young people to be mobile and enabling young people to access great services across the whole of the county. Every local authority gives priority allocation to care leavers, and also every local authority has agreed that no young person who's left our care will be considered intentionally homeless without a really robust multi-agency meeting. So we've got some real fail-safes in there, and on that measure, you'll see that from Deborah's report earlier, we have really, really high numbers of young people in suitable accommodation. Every young person in Lincolnshire, as I said, has these services open to them. But more recently, I've been able to secure that will come online on the 1st of April, free leisure resource and leisure services access for our care leavers. I'm going to share a lot of this information with Liz Bunny, because that kind of the emotional, physical health and that kind of cycle of improving young people's well-being, listening to everything we've talked about this morning about trauma, physical health and mental health are closely linked. And if we can do anything to secure improvements there, we can do that. And I've got South Kesteven, West Lindsay, North Kesteven and East Lindsay have all agreed to offer free leisure access for our young people from the 1st of April. And I'm going to work with the Leaving Care Service to set up a process whereby we can make sure these young people can access those services. So it's a very simple paper, but a really important paper to identify the power of corporate parenting principles, and as corporate parents making those additional efforts for our young people. And it starts with coming into foster care, it then carries on with permanence, and creating stability and access to great services all the way through to the age of 25 is going to give our young people the best chance in life when eventually they do leave the leaving care service at the age of 25 and go off into the world on their own. So I guess I'll leave it there. I won't go into too much more detail, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Members are requested to review the paper, the achievements to date, and consider how best to enhance and discharge their corporate parenting duty with partners. Comments, questions, please. Councillor Cole, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I raised it. I think it was probably the last comment I made at the last meeting, which is obviously I think one of the actions required. So obviously consider how best to enhance and discharge. How can we enhance? And I suppose for me, it's what do other areas do that we are not currently doing that we could consider to do? And I don't know on that one. And then the other one is obviously leisure facilities. So when are we going to get Lincoln, South Holland and Boston Borough Council all signed up to provide this support?
I thought that question might be asked. Just in relation to what more can be done, I think there's a lot can be done. We need to link in with our business community, and we need to be identifying flexibilities, and maybe some additionality for our care leavers, recognising experience of trauma. And it takes us a little bit longer sometimes to get young people used to what the real world is sometimes about, especially when they've experienced some of the things they have as young people. Guaranteed interviews, as long as they benchmark. I'm not expecting employers and district councils and everybody else to just give jobs away. That's not how the world works. But guaranteed interviews, if somebody benchmarks, Lincolnshire County Council guarantees care leavers interviews if they benchmark. And we've got a number of social workers who are care experienced young people, benchmarked, got an interview, got a job. And I can see Ellie doing something similar. So if Ellie applies, I'll guarantee Ellie a job, an interview, and then she can apply for, I'd like to guarantee her a job. No, but I could guarantee her an interview to hopefully work for us and work with us, and that'd be a fantastic thing. So linking with business communities and district councils, I guess, going away and thinking, I don't know everything that district councils do, I don't know all of the services and all the resources, but going away and putting the thinking cap on and thinking, what can we offer beyond what we currently do? How can we think differently to get something for our young people? We have a really good offer in terms of apprenticeships across district councils and local authority, but unfortunately, the central government raised the minimum standards for apprenticeships, and apprenticeships are no longer the kind of hands-on way into work. They've really put a real academic edge, and a lot of our young people don't achieve necessarily the minimum standards for that. So we've got to think about how can we work with employers. I'm working with Turner's, who's a very large haulage company down in South Holland, who's agreed that they're going to offer some of our care leavers guaranteed jobs, basic jobs, to give them a career and an aspiration. So I'm working with all sorts of employers, and I think the district councils could probably, it would be helpful if they could go away and come to me and say, hey, we've got this in our department, we've got this resource, this service, how can we help? Is there anything we can do? And when it comes to Boston and all the other district councils, I have gone to all of their leisure leads, and all of the local authorities know about the ask, and it would be really, if there would be any political influence you'd like to exert, I would welcome your support.
Well, I'm sure County Councillor Skinner from Boston would always be interested for a conversation on that one. So okay, I don't disagree with anything you've just said. So the pushback then is, can the county council do a bit of research looking at other counties to look at what the districts do and the counties do in terms of support for care leavers? And actually, we have a list of almost like a shopping list of what they do and what the possibilities we do, because as a district, we could create a policy around, guaranteeing an interview. I haven't got an issue with that. I'm sure a lot of my I'm looking at one member that's also here, and I'm sure we haven't got an issue with doing that. But I suppose it's if we haven't got that information to do it, and then it's just looking at what other counties do in terms of the support, because, the leisure one is a really easy one for us to do, and actually it's really, I think, successful in terms of the benefit mentally to a lot of people, and we all know what leisure brings to all of us in society. But then you've also got the other side, which is arts and culture, and yes, we've got a number of fantastic links with local businesses. The county council has through Team Lincolnshire, so I think there's a lot of opportunity there. But I suppose it's, can we just have a bit of a list or a bit of a précis in terms of what other counties are doing?
Yep, gladly I can do that and just circulate that to the panel just for a general discussion outside. Yeah, happy to do that. But yeah, really pleased to do that.
Councillor Whittington.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, on that, in terms of the offering the free access to leisure facilities, obviously that got raised at a corporate parenting meeting about a year or so ago, and so that day, as soon as I got back home, I wrote to Karen Bradford and to Kelly as leader of SK, saying, any chance of us doing this? And I got a great response back. And SK, I'm really pleased that the SK have now done it. But I think the point, Andy, that if we can have a list of stuff from other, potentially what we can do. I mean, I'm pretty sure that there will be willingness there amongst the district councils to start looking at what they can do to help support the whole process. Thanks.
Any further questions? So personally, from my point of view, since May, every meeting that I go into, everything that I'm involved in here in North Kesteven, even at my town and parish councils, I listen for apprenticeship opportunities and have nagged mercilessly people. Andy kindly pointed out to me that actually probably only supports a small percentage of our cared for children because of the restrictions of getting that. So my latest thing is every meeting I go into at town, county, parish, wherever, I listen for work experience opportunities. And that's very much what we need, the opportunity for these cared for, not so children now as they're getting older, opportunities to try work. And it is a different world, as we all know. And it seems to be even, there's a wider gap between the expectations of our younger children now and the reality of work. And I've seen that across all sort of areas. So I think that's one area where we most certainly could help, just having it at the forefront of our minds. A question for you, Andy. What sort of acknowledgement have we put out towards these district councils for what they have done? Have we gone back and thank them? Do we need to do more?
I think that'd be really nice, and I'd be happy to draft something with you to send out on behalf of corporate parenting panel to those councils to thank them for yourself and Councillor Bradwell to send that out if you'd like me to do that. Happy to do that.
That would be great. I assume nobody would object to us just saying thank you. Yes.
I think, Mr. Chairman, on that, I just think it shows then that the county is working alongside the districts, and it probably highlights some of our own councillors on both sides of county and district that probably aren't even aware of this support that's happening as well.
And I think if we have a couple of letters highlighting where certain councils aren't quite helping as much as others, he's always a good sales tool as well. But we'll work with that. Yes, thank you. I propose that the panel receives the report and that comments from our discussions as recorded are taken under consideration. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement, please? Okay, thank you. That is agreed. Thank you very much once again, and Deborah. So we now move on to, not that one, item 9, which is our virtual tour of the secure unit. We're going to receive a visual tour of Lincolnshire's secure unit. Chiara will play the video, and then I think Rachel's going to answer any questions on this. So yeah, thank you, Chiara. Before we go into questions, I just wanted to put some message over from myself. I'm the visiting member for the secure unit. I've just done my first report. I took with me my old lawnmower. You saw the workshop. They will take my old lawnmower in. The children will actually go through it. You saw one had been painted, and then they get them running, and my understanding is they sell them on. When I was there, there was an electric mobility scooter, which I think is the first one of those they had. That they were hoping it's just batteries that it needed. Dave Clark, who's the manager there, he's looking at bikes. I think his latest project is small bikes that could go out to foster families. He also he's happy to look at repairing garden equipment. So I presume that's things like hedge trimmers, that type of thing. I would describe Dave Clark as an ideas magpie. You saw there a gold room. Not much of an explanation, but the gold room is part of their reward strategy. I don't know the exact details, but basically the children, as long as they work in a certain way, behave in a certain way, respect people in a certain way, then they get the opportunity to move up into levels. If you get to the gold level, and I think it's a gold plus level as well, you get the access to that room, which gives you better facilities, gives you pool table. I think it gives you a takeaway once a month or once a week. And I spoke to one of the children there when I was going round, and that's quite a tool. To lose that is not good. And Dave picked that idea up from somewhere else, brought it in, changed it. So I just wanted to say that for a start, and now I invite you to ask any questions or make any comments. Yes, Councillor Whittington.
Obviously, I'm aware of the fact that not all the children, young people in there are from Lincolnshire. Some come from all different parts of the country. But I was just wondering if we could sort of have a bit of a general understanding of sort of, I mean, obviously, I'm guessing that the majority are there because they've been in contact with the criminal justice system. So I'm just wondering, potentially, if you need to get a little bit of sort of information about sort of the young people themselves, where they're from, how long, what's the average amount of time they're in there for. And I'm guessing that it kind of works in with the criminal justice system as well. So maybe there's a little bit of background around that, I think might be quite useful. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, I just wanted to send Dave's apologies. He was very much looking forward to coming today and delivering his presentation himself. He's very passionate about the service, and however, he's gone to a national event which is looking at increasing the secure estates across the country. So it's a really important event that he had to go to today. So he does send his apologies, and I will do my best to answer your questions, but they won't be as good an answer as Dave would have given. But so in terms of the young people, so like it says in the video, it's a nationally, the referrals are dealt with nationally by the Youth Custody Service. So the children could come from all over the country. Referrals are sent in, which Dave screens, and he looks very much around the matching, so around some of the behaviours, because it's really important that as the children are on site 24/7, that the matching is right. So he does have some, he's able to offer some scrutiny around who does come in. The referrals are wide ranging. Like you say, they're all children coming through criminal justice, so they are either going to be on remand, awaiting their trial and sentencing. Sometimes they will stay until beyond their sentencing, and it all depends on their age, how they've settled, and their level of vulnerability. Some young people will come in and they will be in the secure unit while they're awaiting their trial. If they're found guilty, then Dave might say, actually, this young person's done really well, that they are suitable to move on to the kind of young offenders secure training centres environments. And it's the children's home is mainly for the more vulnerable people that wouldn't cope in that environment. So they all have additional vulnerabilities. The reason why they go there, there's several who are on remand or convicted of murder, knife crime, gun crime. Occasionally, the girls tend to be more around welfare, but sometimes more around the kind of fighting, robbery. So it's everything and anything that you could be involved in the criminal justice system for. In the video, it does talk about the one welfare bed that we have got there. So that will be, again, it's nationally managed. The referrals are, so not necessarily from Lincolnshire, although if Dave does get a referral for a child from Lincolnshire for a welfare bed, he will prioritise that in line with our ethos of keeping our children close to us. But again, they could be around, it could be around exploitation, self-harm, absconding incidents, you know, anything that is placing their welfare at risk, which means they need to be in a secure environment for a short period of time. Welfare children tend to be shorter durations because what we don't want to do is institutionalize young people, and they can become very institutionalized quite quickly. And so as soon as they come in, we're looking at exit planning, you know, how can we move this young person on? And in the future going forward, and I'm sure Dave will be back to speak to you all about, we are planning on looking at increasing our secure estate and build it within that move on accommodation, because that's been identified not just by Dave but nationally around how difficult it can be to move young people back out into the community after they've been either in a welfare bed or in a criminal justice bed. So it's hugely wide ranging. Dave has managed the secure unit for a long time. He's been here forever and a day, and he's absolutely fantastic at it. And he's managed to nail that restorative approach whereby you've seen the gold privileges. So it's not about punishing negative behaviours, it's about rewarding positive behaviours and trying to build that learning around, actually you can get more from life if you follow the rules, and if you exhibit positive behaviours and get involved in positive activities. Like Councillor Rose says, Dave is very creative around the kind of manual tasks and things that young people who are perhaps not been academic and perhaps that might have led to them absconding from school, and it's led to them getting drawn into some of these negative behaviours. So Dave's very much focused on around what are they really good at. Let's find what they're really good at and build on that, and then so when they do move on, send them out with a skill or working towards a skill. Education and college future plans are all part of the ethos and the way that they work there for all the young people. So it's a great place to go. It was obviously not a very sunny day in Sleaford when Dave did the video, but it's you know, it's a very well run, settled, established home, and with great management and great staff, and we're very proud of what they achieve.
Thanks, Sarah, because I was going to come on to sort of talk about the staffing. So it's okay next, because I'm guessing that obviously in terms of staffing, obviously, I guess you're going to be having sort of staff off doing different things, but because I'm guessing that the young people have a whole variety of different needs, and I'm just thinking that potentially quite a few of them might have some mental health needs as well, and issues. So I'm guessing that. So do you have any sort of staff who are permanently there, permanently in residence, or do they sort of come or you know, on shift patterns come and go? Just in terms of, because obviously I many years ago I worked in the health service, and I was involved in the team that was managed a lot of the high, medium secure hospitals across the country, and a lot of their sort of staff, there was a mixture of different staff, and different types of security as well as physical security. There's what they call relational security as well, and that's sort of in terms of numbers of staff. So I'm just wondering what kind of staffing ratios you kind of have on sort of staff mix, and I'm guessing that quite a few staff may come in externally, especially around the mental health side of things, to offer specific inputs. I'm just wondering a bit more sort of background, just general background around staffing and that sort of stuff. Thanks. I've not been too vague.
No, that's fine. There is a CAMS team that are based at the unit. So the children have access to psychology, emotional health support, and all the staff are trained in kind of emotional first aid, trauma-informed practice, and they're all well able to support young people emotionally. The staffing levels, each child will be one-to-one during the day. Staffing levels during the night are reduced, but it depends on the needs of the young people. So, for example, you might have a young person who's either unsettled for whatever period and could be awake for most of the night, in which case they'll have one staff member assigned to them all night that can meet their needs. So it is very much on a needs basis. The staff team are well established there. Fortunately, they don't tend to carry many vacancies. Staff do come and go and they move on and they move up, but generally on the whole, it's not somewhere that we struggle to find staff to work there. It's a difficult job. It's a very demanding job. It can sometimes be physical as well. They're all staff are trained in appropriate level use of restraints. And then obviously that, but sometimes they do get injured and then can be off sick for a while. But the whole team pull together, and Dave's manages that really well. And I think what they do is very robust risk assessments around young people's behaviours, so they can kind of anticipate triggers. And what they're also very alive to is that matching. So if there starts to develop a conflict between two, they'll do some restorative work, and occasionally it may be that one of those people needs to move on. Dave has links with other homes, so if a relationship is becoming particularly fractious, then Dave will, they'll look at maybe taking in a different person to move that person on, to keep violence down within the home. I think that generally on the whole we have very, very few serious incidents. In fact, I can't think of I think there was one where a staff member fell during a restraint and injured themselves, but it's actually, they're not kind of scrapping all the time or anything like that. They're generally very well behaved, and particularly the boys. The girls tend to be more of a handful, believe it or not. So yeah, it is difficult, but they do run very efficiently. The staff team are all great. They've also got great business support, and they are very much so. I mean, you'll know Councillor Rowe from being there. It is very much almost like a family environment. They all banter, don't they? And Dave will go down, and everyone will stand to attention and and have a joke and a laugh with him. So it is a very, very difficult area of work to work in, particularly with it being secure, because everything is locked. They have strategies in place as well in terms of separating. So the way the building's set up, it makes it a bit easier to kind of set, if something has kicked off, to separate, get children in different corridors, whatever. So they've got all that kind of in place. They're old hands at it now, so they've kind of thought of everything and been through it. And they also have the CCTV, as you've said, so the children are monitored constantly. Dave has a setup in his room where he can zoom in on any room, so you can check in on all the children. So,
do we have any further questions? I did meet a potential new member of staff while I was there. He got 4 legs and a tail. One of the members of staff put the dachshund in, and the effect that the dog had on some of the children was not missed, shall we say. And I think, I'm not sure exactly what's happening, but I think they're actually looking into the possibility of that being used in a positive way. But I think it was still early stages of that. So if we've got no more questions, I'd like to thank them very much for that, what I thought was a very professional run through. Recently, I attended a homes management meeting I got there just in time for lunch and then stayed for the afternoon, where there was presentations of all the different care homes that we've got, and the permanent and the temporary ones. And I thought it would be good if we could get a similar sort of report, not necessarily such a heavy video, but some form of report from each of those homes, as long as we're not taking too much of the time of the staff there. If obviously the children wanted to be involved and they wanted to do videos, then I think that would be great. But I would like to sort of push ahead with that as part of the thing, so we can see. And I would like it to be something that can be used elsewhere other than here, because I'm aware we're taking staff time for this to happen. So as long as that works and that it's of value away from here, then obviously the better the presentation, then the better for us. So I move that we receive the visual presentation and ask for similar activities to be arranged for the next council term 2022-23. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement? And again, that is agreed. Thank you very much. So we move on to item 10, final item, the panel work programme. This item on page 57-59 of the agenda pack enables the panel to comment on the contents of its works programme, and I ask Chiara to present it. Thank you, Chiara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everyone present. My name is Chiara Hadjianu, and I'm the designated scrutiny officer for this panel. The purpose of this standing agenda item is to give you all a quick forecast and a flavour of what it is to be anticipated in coming months, as to enable you to consider and comment on the content of scrutiny activity programme throughout the year, and to ensure that that is and remains focused exactly where it can be of greatest benefit. So you're welcome to highlight any additional topics that you would like to be included for consideration in the work programme for the next year, 2022-2023, as the work programme is now being developed. I would like to turn your attention to the next meeting on the 12th of May. On that, we have 6 items. We will be receiving the Fostering Quarterly Performance Report for Quarter 4, Regulation 44 Independent Visiting Centre Annual Report, Independent Reviewing Service Annual Report, Children in Care Performance Measures, which I've, Quarter 4, and Fostering Quarterly. Oh, that's a duplication. Apologies for that. And the update from the workshop that, as you, Mr. Chairman, have indicated at the beginning of this meeting, will be held on the 5th of April. So that concludes my update to you, and I'm happy to take back any additional items for consideration. Thank you.
So the corporate parenting panel is asked to agree the work programme and identify any items for future meetings. Do we have any thoughts on that? Councillor Whittington.
Just one, Mr. Chair, that possibly at the workshop event on the 5th of April, maybe as part of that, we could look at potential ideas around the work programme. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. You get that. Any other comments or thoughts? So that's nicely come to the end. I know Councillor Haig's wanted to be off by 12, so I think you've all worked extremely well for him. Thank you very much, officers, for your contributions. I think it's been a good and informative meeting. Thank you and goodbye.